So, J. Ruud, what lovable book are we talking about today?
Well, Stacey Margaret Jones, I'll give you a hint. Don't let the bastards grind you down.
Have I read this book?
Yes.
Oh. Welcome to Between the Covers, where Merlin Mystery Series and Robin Hood Mystery Series author J. Ruud and I, Stacey Margaret Jones, author of Mr. Catherine, discuss one book from J's list of the 100 most lovable novels in the English language each week. And I'm trying to guess this week's book, and I feel like I'm going to be in the Hall of Shame because I've read it and I don't know the answer. Give me another hint.
Well, before I do, I want to just follow up on something that we talked about last week. And I said that if I was wrong, I would correct myself this week.
Ooh.
And I was wrong.
This is
We're talking about P.G. Wodehouse.
Yes.
And his controversial broadcasts from Berlin when he was taken prisoner by the Germans. And I said that I thought it was Evelyn Waugh who had defended him, and I was wrong.
Oh, my
Evelyn
goodness.
Waugh was a fan of his and admired his writing, but it was actually George Orwell
who goodness.
wrote the essay in defense of P.G. Wodehouse. Basically said the only thing he was guilty of was stupidity.
Oh. All right. Well, thank you for that correction. I guess we need to, every once in a while, we'll have to put that up front if we misspeak. Sometimes it happens when you're speaking off the dome.
Yes, and there's not much in the dome.
Speak for yourself. Hey. All right. So give me a second hint so I can prove how much I have in the dome.
Hint number 2, Scrabble.
Give me the third hint.
All right, here's hint number 3, Serena Joy.
Oh, Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood.
That is absolutely correct.
Wow, I guess she played Scrabble
She did play
with the commander.
She does play Scrabble with the commander. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, let's
Which
get
is
into
illegal
it.
because women
She's not
are
supposed
not
to
allowed
read.
to be able to read or write.
Right. So, I suppose it was like the dog playing the piano to him. You don't expect
It's
much.
not done
it's
well,
just
but
the
one is
fact that it's
surprised to
attempted
see it
is
done
the
at all.
amazing thing at all.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into Handmaid's Tale.
Okay.
I have actually read this book as well as watched the show before it jumped the shark, or just kept doing the same things over and over.
Yeah, it did
We
get
don't
to
need
that
to-
point. But you may have heard that the 7th and last season...
There's a seventh season.
There's a 7th and last season, which was just released on May 27th.
Okay. Well, I won't be watching. But, so, this is on your list. It's obviously going to be a much praised and hallowed novel. What other organizations like this book that you'd like to single out? Please don't read to us every list that this book is on.
I'm not going to read every list this is on. A very small percentage. I would like to say first, though, that there are a lot of Margaret Atwood books that could conceivably be on this list.
Yeah,
She's
you've read a lot of them.
Probably the most significant author in world literature who has not yet won the Nobel Prize.
Oh, wow.
She's won the Booker Prize twice for The Blind Assassin and for The Testaments, which is actually the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale. And she was a finalist for the Booker Award on 4 other occasions for Alias Grace, Oryx and Crake, Cat's Eye, and The Handmaid's Tale.
Right.
But the thing is, The Handmaid's Tale is by far her best-known novel and best-selling novel. And, you know, you can't really deny the overall cultural influence of that novel. So that's what puts it on my list. It
Yeah.
actually is on 67 different great books lists.
Okay.
And I am not going to
Thank
read
you.
them all.
Thank you.
But here's some of them. I'm going to single out the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee's 2015 Select 100 list that was voted on by faculty, staff, and students.
That's fair because it's your
Because
alma
that's my
mater
alma
for
mater.
grad school.
Yes.
Yep.
It's on the Guardian's 100 Best Political Books. It's on the 50 Essential Reads by Contemporary Authors as chosen by the Orange Prize for Fiction. It was 94th on Penguin Publishing's 100 Must-Read Classics as chosen by their readers. 71st on 100 Favorite Novels of Librarians, which is your favorite. 57th on the Gazette 2005 Top 100 Books as chosen by Canadians.
Oh, we like that too.
Well, yes. And, of course, she's a Canadian writer.
Yes.
And it's 53rd on the Modern Library's 1998 Readers List, 36th on the Library Journal's Books of the Century, 29th on Entertainment Weekly's Top 100 Novels, 22nd on NPR's Top 100 Science Fiction Fantasy Books, 16th on the BBC's The 100 Stories That Shaped the World list, 11th on the Guardian's 50 Best Loved Novels Written by a Woman, 8th on the Reader's Digest list of the greatest books of all time, and 3rd on the Times list of the new modern classics.
I was about to cut you off because that did almost feel like you were reading 67 lists.
There's not even 20 there.
All right, so since you almost failed that, can you triumph in the down and dirty summary?
All right.
Oh.
We'll find out. All right. Well, in case you've been living in the cave for the past several years, let me quickly summarize the situation of The Handmaid's Tale. Set in the near future in New England, the novel depicts a futuristic patriarchal theocracy, the Republic of Gilead, established after a white supremacist faction overthrew the democratic government of the United States. The narrator and the protagonist of the book, whom we never know by her birth name, but only by her Gilead name, of Fred, thus named because she belongs to Fred, one of the commanders of the Gilead hierarchy, is a handmaid. Her role in this society is to bear a child to her master because his wife, like most of the women in this society, is not fertile, the result of the pollution of the environment. And that is my summary.
So she's an enslaved person.
Yes.
Yes, because she is owned by this man.
She is Fred's,
Right.
which is basically what her name means.
Right, of Fred, right.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to give you the Harps of Glory for that because that was good. And you're right, it does seem, especially to us, I think, like there's so much representation of this novel and then the series in popular culture, memes, references to it, et cetera, that it seems like it would be hard to navigate in America today without knowing the kind of the basics, even if you haven't watched the show or read the book, because you are probably confronted with it in a lot of places, social media, etc.
Yeah.
So it is a dystopian novel.
Yep.
Why is it lovable? Because I generally don't like dystopian books. I don't want to imagine that future. I want to.
Well,
but
you may not want to, but even more than 1984 or Brave New World, which are kind of the two signposts for dystopian novels, there are so many things that really go on in the United States, particularly that suggest the possibility of this future.
There are kind of currents running underneath, and sometimes not so far underneath.
Yeah,
that could erupt, right, and make you feel like this might be closer to our reality than we think.
Yeah. Well, the book was written in 1985, so it's 40 years old. But it became particularly popular with the advent of Trumpism in 2016.
Well, her novel was prescient, but probably because she was aware of the zeitgeist at the time, right?
Yeah, which was the Ronald Reagan era.
Exactly.
When he was rushed into office, and a lot of the old liberals of Congress were voted out in that election through the efforts of particularly people like Jerry Falwell and the
Religious
Christian,
right.
the moral majority.
Oh, that's right.
Was his name for it.
That's interesting.
But then the TV show became popular
Recently.
during the first Trump administration.
Right. I think I read that Margaret Atwood said that she didn't put anything in the novel that humans hadn't done.
Yeah.
And I know that after, the series came out and we had all that imagery, right, of the women in the red cloaks with the white hoods. It's so iconic. Like you can see, just a kind of almost an abstraction of that, right? Just the red cloak and the white hood, and you know exactly what this is an image of, and the political and religious feeling it is meant to evoke, right? Or identity that it's meant to evoke. Yeah. And there were a lot of, there were people of color that said, oh, so sorry, white women, right? These things have been happening to us, right? In America, black enslaved women were forced to have children with their masters, right? They didn't have agency. There was no choice involved. And that was really a learning point for me because I watched that show and, to me it seemed in some ways symbolic, but also scary. But then to hear other voices say, yes, humans do these things. They have been done to our people, right?
Yeah.
Was very eye-opening for me, I think, as a white American woman.
Yeah. It may be tempting to take the book's message as applying strictly to a particular politician or particular point in time. But Atwood says that when she studied at Harvard, in Cambridge, in the birthplace of American Puritanism, she realized that strain of Puritanism was in America from its very beginning. And that's what she sees as kind of the birthplace of the notions that come to fruition in the world of The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, there's always going to be these backlashes against any kind of progression of individual rights for marginalized classes, right? Because of that kind of Puritan ethos.
Yeah.
And I read about that a lot in Francis Fukuyama's book called Trust. And it kind of follows the history of those ideas in the United States. And that was something I didn't expect in that book, but it was really interesting to me. The shifts, you could say a swing left or a swing right or whatever, but he also looks at it as, progression in terms of individual liberty and self-determination, and then that puritanical backlash. That it just comes in cycles.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because she felt that there as a student, right? She was observant.
Yeah.
And I suppose as a Canadian...
Yeah, she's kind of an outsider.
Yeah,
looking in.
I think that really helps writers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you're seeing something that other people don't comment on because they take it for granted.
Yeah, yeah. This is why she sets the story in Boston.
Yeah, I was thinking about how she didn't set it in Canada.
No, she sets it in Boston, in the birthplace of Puritanism.
Right, specifically.
Of American Puritanism.
Right.
And in fact, the wall, in the book, the wall is a place where people who have been executed for crimes against the state, which usually means, they actually wanted their freedom or something.
Yeah.
Are hung on the wall. It's the wall around Harvard.
Oh.
That they're hung on.
Oh my goodness. Interesting. I hadn't realized that. Because I have read the book, and then she wrote a sequel.
Yeah, The Testaments.
Yes.
Which won the Booker Prize.
Right, and I read that.
Ago.
I read that as well. But I actually haven't read any other novel, any other fiction by Atwood. I have read some of her poetry. and I teach one of her poems to my literature students. But how does it compare to her other fiction?
Well, a lot of her stuff is science fiction-y. The Oryx and Crake, which I mentioned, and even the Blind Assassin is a little bit science fiction-y.
Okay.
So she has that, at least in a lot of her work, there's that
Right.
kind of tendency.
So that's interesting because I think a lot of times science fiction is often used by writers to explore things that aren't happening in society, or they are happening, but it's a way to bring them to life in a different way for the reader to experience or look at them. And I can see that she's exploring these ideas in a way, like an alternative history almost, right?
Yeah.
Like Handmaid's Tale feels like that.
Yeah. It's what most science fiction does.
Right.
Is take current trends
Right.
and project them into the future.
Right.
To imagine what the outcome will be.
Right.
If this continues.
Right.
And what you get is a real dystopian society.
Yeah. Well,
Which-
I don't know if you answered the question exactly. I may have cut you off. Why is it lovable?
Well,
It's so
lovable.
depressing. It's so horrifying.
It's lovable because it's so memorable. It's lovable in the way that 1984 is lovable.
Yeah.
It's lovable in the way that Brave New World is lovable.
It's lovable because she's so good at what she does that it changes your perception.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. Books that are unpleasant but bring you insight, right?
Yeah.
Are
and this
lovable.
Definitely brings you insight.
Even if you put it down and you long for a time 3 weeks before you had read it where you were more innocent.
If I could only go back.
If I could only go back, but now
days.
I can't unsee it. But it's interesting that, she wrote it 40 years ago, and to me that's what makes it literary as well, is that it became popular as we experienced one of these puritanical waves, cultural waves. But she wouldn't have had to say, this person is going to do this, right? This is a strain in your culture.
Yeah.
And I'm going to write about it.
Yeah.
And it's prescient because she's aware of it. And it also goes back to what Fukuyama writes about the cycles of it. And it's literary because it isn't specific. It's not somebody getting up and saying, I'm going to write an allegory, right, of the current administration,
Yeah.
which is different.
Yeah.
So I think that's really fascinating to me. And I think you make a really good point about the fact that she wrote it in the 80s.
Yeah.
It feels current, but it's timeless.
Yeah,
Sadly.
I think it is unfortunately timeless.
Yeah.
And it fits in with the, the second wave feminism that had actually started well before that, but was still around.
I have to admit, I have some ignorance about feminist wave identification.
Well, I'm not the best to inform you. I mean, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
If I am, I'll tell you next week.
We'll check back in 2 weeks.
But of Fred, she's not a rebel. She's a normal woman who is stuck in this place and obviously hates it. And she has the experience of having been in a freer society before the revolution that
Began, right.
that brought Gilead.
And she had a child.
She had a child and a husband, and
She worked.
Yeah, oh yeah. And they were trying to cross the Canadian border before the iron hand of Gilead clamped down. But they didn't make it. And she
Right.
doesn't know what happened to her husband, and she doesn't know what happened to her daughter.
It's excruciating.
She learns later from Serena Joy, who's the
commander's wife.
commander's wife, that her daughter has been given basically to some Gilead family, high-ranking family that needed a child.
Yeah.
And she's being taken good care of. She doesn't have any idea where her husband is or what's happened to
Right.
him. She has a college roommate, Moira, who goes through the Handmaid training with her, but who says, I'm not doing this.
Right.
She's the real rebel. And she actually is able to escape from the training school for handmaids she steals the uniform of one of the aunts. The aunts are tutors in the school who are basically, trying to brainwash the women into what they're going to have to do. And Moira actually escapes, and she doesn't know what happened to Moira. If she lived or died in her escape, because the people who try that are the ones who end up on the wall.
Right.
And she doesn't know what's happened to her mother, and she wants to know what's happened there because her mother is beyond childbearing, which makes her what the society calls an unwoman. So she's of no use to the society, and she thinks, is in the colonies with the other useless women, other unwomen. She's been set to work cleaning up toxic waste.
Right. Wasn't her mother like a scholar or was that in the show?
Yeah, her mother was a professional woman.
Yeah. And then she's cleaning up toxic waste.
Yeah, but she won't be doing it long. Because she'll die. She'll die soon.
Yeah.
But she herself, of Fred herself, doesn't try to do anything too radical the way
she just
Moira
wants
does.
to live and to find out what happened to her child and her husband, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's an interesting choice. It can be tempting to choose the rebel as your main character, right, because of the action. Yeah. But I think it's probably something that is also helpful to the reader is to see somebody who they may be more like. Like, you might just wake up in this world and try to go to bed again that night alive, right? Like not everybody's going to be leading the rebel forces, right? Not everybody's going to be Princess Leia, right? No. Some people are just going to try to live. And it also is such a fascinating question. Like, what has to happen between now and tomorrow when you wake up tomorrow owned by another human being?
Yeah. Well, she has all the feelings that one might have. She says that her name is Elfred, but then at one point in the novel she says, "My name isn't Elfred. I have another name, which nobody uses now because it's forbidden. I tell myself it doesn't matter. Your name is like your telephone number, useful only to others. But what I tell myself is wrong. It does matter. I keep the knowledge of this name like something hidden, some treasure I'll come back to dig up one day. I think of this name as buried. This name has an aura around it, like an amulet, some charm that survived from an unimaginably distant past. I lie in my single bed at night with my eyes closed, and the name floats there behind my eyes, not quite within reach, shining in the dark."
You can see from that, too, why Atwood is a good poet, because, she knows how to use an image, and the name in this is the symbol of the person, right?
Yeah.
You can call me something else, but that isn't who I am.
Yeah.
And even if who I am isn't allowed to surface, it's still there. It can't be erased.
Yeah.
Wow.
The people who do get away are the ones who kill themselves in this book.
Their escape is figurative.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they are escaping.
They are escaping.
They are no longer of use to the regime, right? Because they are dead.
Yeah. She says at one point, it isn't running away they're afraid of. We wouldn't get far. It's those other escapes, the ones you can open in yourself, given a cutting edge. Mm-hmm. And she makes friends with one of the other handmaids that every morning she walks to the market with the other handmaid, to this market which identifies itself not by words on a sign because they're not allowed to read.
They're not allowed to read.
But a picture of a bee and a cow, which symbolizes the land of milk and honey.
Right.
where the
But it
promised
isn't
land.
because of the environmental degradation.
No, it's a terrible
right,
place.
because the power structure in Gilead is raping everything.
Yeah.
Just it's all ours for the taking, and then there's trying to manage the consequences by enslaving people.
Yeah. Of Fred's friend is of Glenn.
Yeah.
And she learns after they've done the walk several times, she kind of gets beyond the
Small talk.
small talk.
Allowable small talk.
Yeah, the allowable small talk, like may the Lord open.
I was going to say, may the Lord open.
Under his eye.
Oh, so
And
creepy.
under his eye is a direct allusion, I think, to 1984. Big Brother is watching you.
Yeah, I was going to say the surveillance state.
Yeah. But in fact, of Glenn, she learns as part of a resistance group.
So scary, though.
And one day she walks out and there's somebody else waiting for her.
Whose name is of Glenn.
Whose name is of Glenn, who's a different person. And she learns ultimately that of Glenn escaped by hanging herself.
Oh.
She also discovers that she's not the first handmaid to be in this house, because she finds little messages written in hidden places on the wall that her predecessor had written.
And they don't have a child,
No,
so I guess it didn't work out.
it didn't work out for her. One of the things that her predecessor wrote on the wall is "Nolite te bastardes carborundorum," which she later finds out means "don't let the bastards grind you down."
Oh, okay. That's the hint.
She discovers also that her predecessor, the previous of Fred, also had died by suicide.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things to worry about in this book is the narrator going to go the way that
Right.
these others have gone, these other handmaids.
Well, and I suppose that really is the threat, because they have too few people who can conceive and bear children.
Yeah.
And every time somebody dies in that way, there's one less woman that can have a Gilead baby, right?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, maybe the way we are living is not healthy. Maybe we should live a different way. But no, we would never want to do that.
No.
I think the TV series, when we watched, especially the first season, I think was very powerful in providing images for what the book, imagines.
And
but-
the first season does follow
Yeah.
the book pretty
But I
pretty
think
closely.
it still can't do, in some ways, what the book can do, right? What a writer like Atwood can achieve, as you imagine what she is. She's saying, I think another character that's really fascinating is, you have the aunts who are, Uncle Tom's.
Yeah, essentially they bought
But-
into the system.
Serena Joy was part of the political system that created the modern the current governance of Gilead, right?
Yeah, yeah.
She was a thought leader, as they say, a philosopher, a political thinker. She spoke, right?
She was a television evangelist.
Yes.
Who had written books.
And then she created a world in which she's not allowed to read.
She was highly invested in the patriarchy.
And I saw a TikTok the other day of, I don't even know who it is because I'm fortunate enough not to, but these two women on saying that they would be fine if they lost their right to vote, because they don't think women vote well at all, and women are stupid, and I was like, you're sitting on your podcast making millions of dollars in your media empire. That's all going to go away.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say about Serena Joy is this idea that Serena Joy, as the commander's wife, right, has some authority over the women in the house, the Martha
Yeah.
and the handmaid, whatever. And it reminds me of that meme I saw, that she's a dog on a longer leash, but she's still on a leash.
Yeah.
And her character, I think, evokes so much emotion in women, because they're like, you caused this. You're part of how this happened.
Yeah. she helped bring about the revolution, only to find that it was not quite the ideal she had envisioned. And the narrator says,
Who could have told her that?
The narrator says, how furious she must be now that she's been taken at her word.
Yeah.
And she is.
Well, I was thinking about that the other day, watching that TikTok of those women saying how silly women are and how they shouldn't vote and the stupid stuff they do with their vote and their economic power. And I'm like, you have a credit card because of feminism and women that can vote, right?
Yes.
You get to choose what you wear because of this. And just the ignorance of how carefully you have to guard that. But, it's okay. Make content and make some money from popping off about it, right? Whatever suits you in the short term.
Yeah.
But I hadn't thought about them in terms of Serena Joy until just now. But that's
they are
exactly
the
what
Serena
they
Joys
are.
of tomorrow.
They actually are. They probably wouldn't mind being called that.
One thing that you find out as the book progresses is that when you have these kinds of laws that go against human nature,
Right.
that ultimately human nature is going to find ways to break them. And one of those things happens when the commander, Fred, secretly has Fred come to join him in his private office and breaks out the Scrabble game.
Right.
And has her play Scrabble with him. And another thing happens when Serena Joy approaches of Fred, and because she's fairly certain that the commander must be infertile.
The problem is with Fred.
Yeah. Because, the previous Handmaid hasn't given birth, and the current one hasn't. And of course she hasn't, but
Right.
we assume she's infertile.
Well, I'm sure that the power structure assumes it's her fault.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But she secretly has of Fred couple with the driver.
Nick
is the driver. And she does. And then she meets with him secretly several other times. But she doesn't know whether to trust him or not, because he might be...
It's also scary.
He might be an eye. The
Right.
eyes are
That's
sort
right,
of
the eyes.
the Gestapo.
Well, you
of this
wouldn't know
society.
whether to trust another handmaid. Like, she might be
Yeah.
hinting, okay, I'm part of the rebellion. And, I mean, it'd be so scary. What if you said, oh, okay, and then they come and arrest you?
Yeah.
Because she wasn't. She was an eye, and she was baiting you, right, or entrapping you.
Well, she wouldn't be an eye because she's a woman.
Oh, well, there you go.
But, of course, she could be... I suppose she could be influenced by the
Exactly.
power structure.
Right. You don't know.
Yeah, you don't.
So that's part of that aspect of when they're trying to enforce unenforceable laws.
Yeah.
You don't know who is going to inform on you.
Yeah.
And that is part of their power, is the informants.
Yeah.
Right? But
yeah.
when you have unenforceable laws, you have to spend so much resources on enforcing them. Right? Because people
Yeah.
are going to people.
Yeah.
And these laws that only favor the most powerful getting to do what they want, you're spending everything you have just trying to keep people in line. And you can't keep them in line because nobody can live like that.
Yeah.
They'll die, they'll escape, or they'll die.
Yeah. There's some of 1984
Oh, sure.
going on here where Winston and they're meeting in this guy's upper room, and it turns out
He's an informant.
he's an informant. Yeah. So you don't know who to trust in this kind of society.
Well, and that happened in communist Europe during the Cold War, like in the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia. People might inform on their neighbor because they wanted their apartment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't even mean that the neighbor was doing anything, because there was no due process, right? If somebody
Yeah.
pointed at you, you had no, plus it's impossible to prove a negative. I mean, almost impossible. And somebody might, inform on you because you didn't give them a raise they wanted at work, or, I mean, it's such a pernicious system.
Yeah.
And it isn't going to work the way it's meant to because people don't work like that.
No.
It's interesting. I mean, she has all those elements in Handmaid Tale of the authoritarian government.
Yeah.
And how
when you have no due process, when you have a system where there is no due process, anybody can do anything to anybody.
Well, the powerful can do anything.
If you're powerful, you can do anything.
This is something
to anybody.
I've thought about recently, is that when you have this kind of authoritarian system, the favored people can do anything without fear of legal repercussions.
Yeah.
And the unfavored people can't do anything legal without fear of repercussions, right? Like if you're unfavored, you can't do the thing that you legally can do. If you're favored, you can do the thing you're legally prohibited from doing. It's a upside down.
Yes.
And sometimes there's no way to know what, and part of the power structure is you might be able to do it today and you might not be able to do it tomorrow, or vice versa. You don't know. So you keep yourself in check because you're afraid. Well, before we move on, is there any other comments you want to make on the lovability of this novel?
Well, the plot and theme of the novel are the things that people are most attracted to. But there's one particular thing that's really important that is not going to show up in the TV show or the movie that was made back in 1990. And that's the point of view, the narrator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, talk a little about that because that is distinct to the book.
Fred speaks in the present tense throughout the book, except when she's remembering the past.
Right.
And it gives the story a kind of air of immediacy.
Yeah.
Like it's if it's happening right now. But it also raises the question, how can she be telling this story and who's she telling it to? Because in this society, there's nobody that she could trust
to tell
this story to. And she can't be writing it because writing is forbidden.
Right.
You find out at one point that she's actually dictating to a tape recorder.
Oh, okay. I forgot that.
That's not something that you see in the TV show.
Right. It's not useful to them.
No. She has consciously tried to imagine an audience at some remote future time when Gilead will have fallen.
Makes me cry.
And she says, if it's a story I'm telling, then I have control over the ending. But if it's a story even in my head, I must be telling it to someone. You don't tell a story only to yourself. There's always someone else, even if there is no one. And she sort of puts all her hope in this imagination of a future audience. By telling you anything at all, she says, I'm at least believing in you. Believe you're there. I believe you into being. Because I'm telling you this story, I will your existence. I tell, therefore you are. So I will go on. So I will myself to go on.
It's how she has hope.
Yeah.
And that goes back to that Anne Lamott quote, that hope is a revolutionary patience. In this way, she is a rebel. She is a revolutionary. There is someone who will care about my story.
Yeah. And she creates herself as well as the audience.
Yeah.
For the future audience, if they ever exist and come and get a hold of these tapes. She is creating herself with words.
It's such a crucial decision of Atwood's to do the present tense with the backward looks, right?
Yeah.
And to set it in this moment and then the next page, this moment, and then the next page, this moment, because it puts the reader in that uncertain place as well.
Yeah.
And sets the reader, it makes it even more real to the reader.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
I think there's also an allusion to Samuel Beckett novel, The Unnameable.
Oh, okay.
Which was published 1958 in English. It was published in French in 1953. And that whole novel is a person telling himself into existence, basically, using language to create himself. And it ends with the sentence. Well, actually, it's not a sentence. After the first 14 pages of that novel, the whole rest of the novel is one paragraph.
Oh my God, I could not read that.
And
Was it written by one of my comp students?
no, but it ends with the unnameable, and notice that
Yes.
she is also unnameable.
I love that.
It ends, I can't go on, you must go on, I'll go on.
Oh, right, okay.
Just as she says something very similar there.
So Atwood's in conversation with that novel.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
Taking it as a revolutionary feminist, right? Of Fred
Yeah.
is this.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize that. That's really interesting. Okay. Wow. Well, that's a great way to put it in a literary context as well.
Yeah.
Because, writers write things that are products of their reading
Yeah.
and their study and their thinking. All right. Well, why might someone not like Handmaid's Tale?
I would say that those podcasters that you talked about are likely not to like this novel.
Maybe they'd like it. Maybe they think that'd be great because they think they'll all be Serena Joy.
Well, even if they're Serena Joy,
Yeah, exactly.
they're still on a leash.
Exactly. They think they're special because they're on a longer leash, but then
Yeah.
they realize they're on a leash.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose people who imagine a more authoritarian world that doesn't hurt them might not like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this will never happen because
Won't happen to me.
it won't happen to me.
It'll happen to the people that deserve it to happen
Right.
to them.
Right. Exactly.
Which is everybody but me.
Exactly. All right. Well, where are you going to put it? How does it rank as we build our list in order, which I'm making you do against?
I do want to say you should read the book.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And don't rely on the TV show to tell you, what this is about. There is a movie version, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
in 1990, that had a screenplay that was written by Harold Pinter.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's
Nobel
random.
Prize winner.
Wow.
And it
Interesting.
starred Natasha Richardson as of Fred, Faye Dunaway as Serena Joy, and Robert Duvall as the commander,
Oh, I should
and Elizabeth
watch that.
McGovern as Moira.
Oh, I should watch that. I love Natasha Richardson.
I think it got kind of mixed reviews, but I think it's probably fairly close to the book. I know there was some complaining because of Fred actually does have a name that she is remembered and she talks about.
Yeah. Why do they do that? Anyway.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Pinter.
Well, and we watched the show and we liked it. I think we lost interest in the third season because it felt so repetitive and
and it was straying so far from.
well, there's only one book, right? Like
Well,
they didn't do a limited
there are
series.
two now.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Yeah. it's
In
interesting.
fact, after this seventh season, the producers of the Handmaid's Tale are planning on a new series based on the Testaments.
Oh, okay.
So
So you can watch the first season of that and then
probably
feel like
You'll be fine.
you've done your bit.
yeah.
All right.
But I'm okay. To answer your question,
How do you rank it?
I'm ranking it at number 29, I guess.
Okay.
Right after the Code of the Whisters.
Oh, okay. Wow, what a shift. And now for
And-
something a little darker.
And right before 1984.
Oh, okay. So they're in a little.
Yeah.
That's a little pocket there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that was good. That was a interesting revisit.
Yeah. So now, are we ready for Chaos Reader?
Yes. Well, I don't have the book, but I am going to still talk about my Richard Nixon biography, Richard Nixon, A Life. I am about 200 pages from the end. He is president. And speaking of, the conservative, her in the 1980s Boston area, Nixon signed the EPA into existence. He did a lot of, what we would call liberal policies now. I think there were some things that he vetoed, but Congress overrode him because there was such a wave after Silent Spring and, to protect the environment. And he also signed the law with Title IX.
And he went to China.
And, well, I haven't gotten there. No spoilers.
Sorry.
But where I am now is that he's signing into law a lot of progressive agenda items.
Yeah.
And he's complaining a lot that he's not getting credit because the liberals aren't going to give him credit because he's a conservative, and the really conservative people don't like some of what he's
Don't
doing.
like anyone.
But of course, any book, any novel, or any biography that you read of Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, you're going to read a lot about Vietnam. So I'm still in the Vietnam era of American politics. And it is, I can't imagine what it was like to live with, because it is oppressive in the books. And I mean, it's astounding. So that's where I am. But I will be finished with that before long, and it's really well written. I mean, I just really enjoy it. I really would recommend it. It's a wonderful biography of Nixon at a truly interesting time in American politics. So,
Okay, cool.
all right. Well, we'd like to thank our producing sensei, Jerry Bruno. We'd like to thank our listeners all over the world. We
All
love
over the
listening or looking at the list of where our listeners are coming from. That's really exciting for us. And, of course, we'd like to ask you to share our podcast with your book-loving friends. And like, share, comment, subscribe, all the things. We'll see you next week. Between the covers.